"Wait, why the lone face?" Ella quipped, regarding me with a smirk that suggested I was nothing more than a sulky little kid. Maybe she had a point. After all, she was nearly 5 years my senior, and as spring approached its twilight, I had just celebrated my 30th birthday, while she navigated the waning days of her 34th year. I was seething inside because we had been an item for 6 months, and she constantly rebuffed my attempts to finally meet her parents, or at the very least, some of her friends. Each time I brought it up, her reply was loud and firm. A casual refusal followed by an ever-growing list of excuses. First, it was that her mom and dad were off on vacation, then they fell ill, and soon after, they'd vanished to their country retreat for an entire month. What gnawed at me most, though, was not being welcomed into her home. Our relationship had initiated on her terms, and all I had ever seen was my own space. "Well, don't be so glum, darling," she said, planting a quick kiss on my cheek before skipping off to the shower. Yet, how could I harbour resentment when she was radiating such playfulness? Ella was not so much a woman as she was a whirlwind, a force of nature. It was that very energy that drew me to her. She was perpetually genuine, bubbly, and vibrant. And of course, she had once again tossed her belongings all over the room. I picked up her jeans from the floor, and a small wallet fell out of my back pocket, which landed on the floor with a thud. It never occurred to me to look at the person's basic ID card, but the damn thing opened up on its own on the marital status page. Suddenly I was on fire. I was seized with a burning feeling. It turns out it was a stamp. She's been married to some guy named Hudson for 10 years now. My hands were shaking as if I had caught a fever. I gathered her clothes into a messy pile and stood at the bathroom door, waiting. When the door finally swung open, Ella appeared with a puzzled look. "What are you doing here?" "Get out," I shouted, seething with anger. "I don't want to see even a trace of your presence here." "What? What happened?" she cried, throwing a pile of clothes at her feet. "You found yourself a boyfriend to have fun cheating on your husband." "Your passport fell out of your pocket," I said in a calmer tone. "Don't bother making excuses. Get dressed and go back to your husband." She walked around the room a little, gathered her things, and sat down on a kitchen stool to put on nylon stockings. All this time, I just stood in the hallway, staring at her in complete disbelief, completely confused. "He refuses to grant me a divorce, you know." She blurted out between sobs. "I've been attempting to break free for 3 years." Tears streamed down her flushed cheeks. I couldn't bear to watch, so I approached her and started dabbing away the tears from her face. "Why are you putting me through this?" I inquired. "He assaults me, you realize? He's warned he'll kill me if I dare to leave." Her eyes told tales of pure hopelessness. "Gear up. We'll tackle this together," I asserted, my tone laced with outrage. How could someone so frail and tender be subjected to such cruelty? Ella's tears triggered my protective instincts as sharply as a sick in command rouses a guard dog, but she resisted. Her fear was palpable. She worried that the villain would not only endanger her life, but also target her aging parents. There was no question in my mind about his vile nature. Ella had confided in me the extent of his tyranny. He'd get drunk to the point of senselessness and lash out at her. He wouldn't hesitate to haul his rowdy drinking pals into their home either. Clearly, I couldn't just stand by and watch her suffer. For the upcoming week, my mind was consumed with the quest to uncover her address. I was about to confront this local despot right on Ella's special day. Since early this morning, I had been penning messages to her. Initially, she responded, but as lunchtime approached, her replies dwindled. I was in a frenzy of anticipation. Who knows what kind of surprise her husband might have in store for her? To settle my racing thoughts, I opted for a brief stroll to regain my composure. My legs instinctively guided me along the familiar paths, a true testament to muscle memory. My mind didn't put up much of a fight either. A short half-hour later, I found myself wandering through a bustling shopping mall, home to a lovely eatery I often frequented with friends. Thinking a cold beer might help ease my nerves, I decided to treat myself. The server graciously suggested a table with a view of the street, which I gladly accepted. From that vantage point, the entirety of the restaurant unfolded before my eyes. There sat an elderly couple delighting in a plate of pasta. Nearby, children revelled in scoops of chocolate ice cream. And there she was. Indeed, she was almost directly across from me. Ella, accompanied by her husband and her parents, whom she affectionately called Mom and Dad. The trio of children clamoured to shower their mother with affection and well wishes. I attempted to size up my competitor and quickly discerned that he was no tyrant. Instead, he came off as the quintessential family man. He gazed at Ella with the same soft, puppy-like adoration that I felt, planting kisses on her hands and murmuring sweet nothings. In playful defiance, she retorted, "Oh, please, hush already. I've had more than enough of your chatter at home." With that, he averted his gaze, his eyes brimming with humility, and nodded in complete agreement. "Check it out across the street." She read from her phone and glanced up, obviously startled. I could see panic in her eyes. She was terrified I might make a scene and spill the beans on her little secret. Quick as a flash, I sent another text. "I'm by the restroom waiting." So, who's really the bad guy here? I hovered when she finally stepped into the cramped corridor. "You just don't get it. Where at?" Ella blurted. "I'm exhausted, and I don't love him anymore." "What sort of rubbish are you speaking? Don't you feel a bit embarrassed spreading such baseless rumors about your own spouse? He's harmless as can be. It's more probable that you're the intimidator here. What has he possibly done to you?" I confronted her before walking away. Nonetheless, she didn't stop there. Soon after, she began bombarding me with texts, spinning a whole new narrative about her husband's infidelities. Shortly, these accusations shifted to claims of his complete incapacity. I initially ignored her texts, but eventually I had to block them altogether. Ultimately, there's only one lesson to be drawn from this. While eloquent speeches might be enchanting, only hard evidence should be trusted. The marriage certificate in my drawer should have been a wake-up call, yet I continued clinging to the fictional saga of the tormented wife she portrayed.